I've been meaning to take my side project, AI Nutrition Tracker, from its expensive low-code base to a highly customizable full-code base. I thought, why not just make a video series about it? Show anyone who's interested how long it takes, what the advantages and disadvantages are. Now, this will be the first part of a video series, and we will look at some preparation and how you can cut some first ties to expensive low-code tools.
Okay, so to begin, here's the application. You press the plus button and you can upload an image of your food, or you can also input text if you want to. So let's just put in a tiny schnitzel and scan this. And as we can see, it's a breaded cutlet with fries, not surprising. You can take a look at the details, you can adjust individual ingredients, and this is the application we want to take to a full code app. I don't yet know how many videos this series will be in the end, but this first video will be about cutting ties to the low-code tools. The next video will be about the new AI model that will power the image scan and the text scan. The video after this will look at how to build the application in Expo. Afterwards, we're going to build a landing page as well, which is likely going to be a separate video as well. And then lastly, we're going to launch it. And perhaps we're also going to take a look at how you can migrate authentication and database from my old database provider, which is Firebase, to a new database provider. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, why is he doing this? Well, firstly, it's fun. It's a side project, and I use side projects to try out things. But beneath it all, there's a bigger reason. I built it with low code, and we all did low code because we said, okay, we're going to sacrifice customizability of our product for speed. Speed to try things out quickly and to validate things. Now, with AI, this speed advantage is gone. So why sacrifice customizability without getting anything back? This brings us straight to the second point, which is my setup. It's FlutterFlow app. It doesn't have a landing page. Changing everything would probably take me much more time in FlutterFlow than to just code it. And lastly, it's fun. I want to try out new things. I want to, get experience in this area of porting low-code apps to full-code apps, because as a freelancer, this is also something I offer, and this gives me a chance to optimize it in a risk-free environment. Also, before I forget it, I wrote a really lengthy blog article about it, and I also did a YouTube video about it. So I'll link both in here, and you could probably see something up here linking you to it if you want to get into the weeds of it all. Let's look at some architecture. This is the current setup of AI Nutrition Tracker. It's pretty simple. For the front end, I'm using FlutterFlow, and I've built it in a decoupled way from the back end, for which I'm using BuildShip. The reason why I did this is because I knew it will make it easy to switch out front ends and back ends. If you are building a low-code application, do try to stick to this best practice. Build front end and back end in a decoupled way. Do not build all the flow and the logic inside FlutterFlow, because in that case, moving away from that front end is going to be very difficult. The database, well, that was just a lazy choice. I simply used Firebase because it works really well together with FlutterFlow. The application is, for one, on the iOS App Store, and for the other, it's also running as a web application that is hosted on Vercel and that is synced via GitHub. Now, where do I want to go from there? I want to make it much simpler. I want to go to this. As I said before, I want to build a front end in React Native, and I will use Expo as a framework. The database and backend will be in Superbase. I want to have a relational database. I don't want to have a NoSQL database anymore. And Superbase also provides lots and lots of other stuff. It's authentication, it's backend logic, triggers, queues. There's a lot in there, and it's an open source project, which I also always like very much and try to use whenever I can. Same with Vercel AI SDK. It doesn't really belong here, but it's just, it makes it easy to build AI workflows, and I will show you how. I will move away from a web application for the scanning. I will publish both apps, or the app in the iOS App Store and in the Android Play Store. And I will build a separate landing page that I will host via Vercel. I will probably build that with Next.js, but that is a topic to be decided at a later stage. I am currently paying $70 a month for FlutterFlow, and I am paying $25 per month for BuildShip. This is what's costing me money. Firebase is free. Web Vercel, at least at the traffic I'm getting, is free. And the iOS App Store, once you pay the developer certificate, is also free. So why am I paying $70 exactly? I'm paying $70 because I can directly one-click upload to the App Store. This is important. And this also means if I want to cut ties to BuildShip and FlutterFlow, that I need to get the app in a state that allows me to deploy it one last time to the App Store and the web, and then have it in a state where it just sits there and works, while I can replace the logic that is currently running on BuildShip, and I can replace the application itself in React Native. And the one thing that makes this really easy now is the beauty of decoupled working. Because what is actually happening? All my logic sits inside BuildShip. Okay, I can show you an example. This is BuildShip, and this, for example, is text adjustment. So all this logic is happening in here. FlutterFlow, all this is doing, it's sending an API request. This used to be it. It's sending an API request to BuildShip. Everything's happening in BuildShip, and when it's done, I can see the updated logic in here. This makes one thing possible. So, BuildShip is currently being talked to by FlutterFlow. Okay, so this is happening over here. BuildShip talks to FlutterFlow, and FlutterFlow talks to BuildShip. BuildShip in turn talks to Firebase, and of course also to the AI. And all we need to do now, because we did this in a decoupled way, is we can simply move this a little to the left and put in a Next.js API. And this Next.js API does nothing else but talk between FlutterFlow and BuildShip. With this new API, we can at some point remove BuildShip and simply write our own logic. So at some point we can simply put in our own logic and cut the ties to BuildShip. And given that FlutterFlow was successfully uploaded the iOS to Open Vercel with those new API routes, and API routes, what I'm talking about is simply a URL, we can change everything in here. This will always work. This is no longer necessary, and this is also no longer necessary. So that's the way we're going to do this. This is the beauty of decoupled building. Of course, at some point, we will get rid of FlutterFlow and put our Expo app in here, and this will run very nicely. Now, let's start building this Next.js API, and I will show you a very bare bones implementation of how you can talk from BuildShip to Next.js API. Luckily, actually, on the day that I'm making this video, I was made aware of a very interesting blog post by Lee Robinson, building APIs with Next.js. Again, I'm going to link it down, and it explains it very, very well and gives you a great start. Next.js have provided a bare bones API project without all the fluff you do not need if all you want to do is build an API. For example, you do not need Tailwind config and global CSS and all that if you just want to have an API, because what you're going to get back in the end is just a JSON object. Let's just take this and go ahead and in our terminal create this application. It's going to lead us through, and we're just going to say API test. And yes, we would want like TypeScript. No, we don't need this. Okay, let's create this. Now let's cd into this, to the API test, and open cursor. Now what do we have here? We don't have much, and that is a good thing. We have our app folder, and they provided two standard routes for us that we can use. Now to test this out, let's first of all say pnpm dev. So to start this up on the local host, And the way we can test this is very simple. I have the Postman extension in here, but you could just as well use this on your local browser. Simply go ahead and say new HTTP request, localhost 3000, and simply send this, and we will see message hello world, and this is exactly what we expected. And they provided another route, which is with a slug, and whatever slug you put in, you get out there. So if we say test slug and you send this, we should get hello test slug. Very simple. And as I said, you could just as well do this in a local environment. If you type in localhost 3000, you get hello world. And if you say test Chrome, we will see hello test Chrome. I am just using Postman in here because it's much faster and you can save your API calls. Okay, let's first of all clean this up a bit. Let's get rid of this. We do not need this. And let's go simply for the route. And we can say export async function get, which is exactly what we want to do. Because in my case, all I want to send is two things. I want to send and let me just show you this. All I want to send is query parameters, and we want to see document ID and user. Normally in BuildShip, you have a BuildShip URL you send stuff to, and your method, in this case post, but you can put get in there. You can send query parameters to it, and these query parameters will be read out. So in my case, the user ID and a user and document ID, and those refer to the Firebase references. Now let's go in here. We can keep the get. And one thing we will get in here is actually a request, which is next request. And we want to update the import. And what we want to do next is a try catch statement. And if everything goes wrong, what we want to do there, send an error message and say something went wrong. But we don't actually need this. Now, the very first thing you want to do is you want to protect your API route. You don't want to allow everybody to just send it there. And one easy way I'm going to do this right now is we're going to say we have an API key. And this API key will be part of the request, specifically of the headers, and it will be, well, begotten is probably not what you can say, but it will be XAPI key, which will be sent with the request. And what you want to do is simply, if there is no API key, or your or the API key is not equal to whatever you're going to set, and we're going to set this API key in a local env file. So let's create this .local.env, and we're going to say let's call it API key for now, and we're going to say 1, 2, 3. Do give it something that's a little more complicated. And I just noticed I made a little mistake. Of course, it's not .local.env, but .env.local. And then we can say process.env.api key, which is what we've got. Okay, and then basically, if the API key is not correct, then it will simply decline. Next thing you also want to test is you want to test if you're getting whatever data you want to have in the query. So in my case, I put them in the query itself. So you want to get the search params. So search params equals request.next URL.search params. Okay, and then you've got access to those, and within those search params are what you need. So for example, if I have const document ID, what we want to get is these are equal to search params.get and then document ID, and this will supply me with whatever I need. And if that is not available, so say if document ID, then I simply want to again return this, but say something else, like say I don't know, document ID not available, And you can, in that case, send back 400. I also needed the user, which is the user ID. And so for me, it was either this or the user being unavailable, at which point I would return an error. And the next thing we want to get is we want to create the headers for whatever we're sending over to BuildShip, so that BuildShip can properly accept this. So we're going to say const BuildShip headers equals new headers. And in those BuildShip headers, we're going to append whatever we need for it. And in this case, let's keep it simple. Let's just say we only need the content type. And let's say this is application JSON as per usual. So this is something we will need to access the BuildShip endpoint. And all we need to do now is we need to get the response. So let's call this BuildShip response. And we're simply gonna, this is a very simple fetch command, so this is nothing fancy. And we're gonna await whatever we have. So I'm just gonna say, I don't know, buildship.com. Okay, you're gonna have to use the BuildShip command that you can find up here. Use whatever is in here, and then you can access it and you can put it in here. If you need certain things, you can make this a temporary literal, and we can say buildship.com, and then we can say, in our case, document ID equals, the document ID we received from FlutterFlow. So we're getting just to explain this again, we're sending something via FlutterFlow to Next.js API point. This includes the document ID and the user, and then BuildShip itself needs that information. So we're going to put in document ID, and we're going to put in the user, which again is user. So now it has everything it needs, and BuildShip can work with whatever we're sending it here. And then we also need to add the usual stuff. So the method is a, if I could type, get method, and headers, yes, are going to be our BuildShip headers. If in the next stage we do not get a BuildShip response, we are simply going to say we had a fail to fetch from BuildShip, that's good. And then we also get our BuildShip data, which is if the response went through, we get the data. In this case, turn it into a JSON if we need it. If, however, as in my case, you only have, or everything is happening within BuildShip, so all you need is a status update, then you could also simply return a response. And so all you need to return is success and status 200, and you're done. So this is all actually that is necessary. So to explain this again, in FlutterFlow, we're sending a GET request. This GET request comes to our new Next.js router. This takes from the document ID and the user ID, and then itself sends a request to BuildShip, and this BuildShip request will get the document ID and everything else. This BuildShip then does all you need in here, so it does its logic and then updates whatever is necessary, and all we need from it is the success response. The success response goes back to FlutterFlow, and FlutterFlow knows everything went well. So now all we need to do is we need to tell FlutterFlow to where to send the new request. So you just create a new API call in FlutterFlow, and instead of taking the BuildShip API URL, you take this new URL. And after this, all you need to do is you need to deploy this to Vercel. Afterwards, change the URL in FlutterFlow. And once you change the URL in FlutterFlow, redeploy this application to the App Store. So now it's sitting there with its new URL addresses. And then we can basically kill our FlutterFlow subscription. We no longer need it because It now sits happily on the web and the iOS App Store. And in the next step, we can go ahead and change whatever is in here to logic that suits us better. And so after we've done that, we can also get rid of the build ship call. And now we've got a fully independent application that no longer needs low code to talk to. We've now successfully untied everything, and this was probably the fastest and simplest of the steps that are going to follow. Now, I hope you liked this start of the video series. There was a lot of explanation, but it is necessary to set everything up, and I do want to know what you think, so please do leave it down in the comments. Also, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them in the comments. So, see you in the next video, and let's see what we can cook up for this new application.